The year is 1861. America, a young nation, finds itself on the brink of a catastrophic war, the issue that tore at the fabric of the nation's slavery. For decades, slavery had been a source of intense debate and division. In the North, abolitionist movements condemned slavery as a moral abomination. The South defended slavery as essential to its way of life. They argued for states' rights, claiming the federal government had no right to interfere. The nation stood at a crossroads. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of the nation. The war began on April 12, 1861, with the Confederate attack on Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. The Confederacy, a collection of 11 southern states that had seceded from the Union, fired upon the federal fort, marking the beginning of the bloodiest conflict in American history. What followed was a brutal and bloody conflict that would claim the lives of over 620,000 soldiers. The first major battle, the First Battle of Bull Run, shattered any illusions of a quick and decisive war. Both sides quickly realized the magnitude of the conflict and the need for vast armies. From the bloody battlefields of Shiloh and Antietam to the pivotal clash at Gettysburg, the Civil War raged on. Each battle brought its own horrors and tales of courage and sacrifice. The nation watched in horror as brother fought against brother, and the land ran red with the blood of its citizens. As the war dragged on, President Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, recognized the need for a bold move. On January 1, 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, a document that would forever change the course of the war and the nation. The Emancipation Proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are, and henceforward, shall be free. This executive order, issued as a wartime measure, struck at the heart of the Confederacy's economic and social order. It transformed the war from a struggle to preserve the Union into a fight for human freedom. The Emancipation Proclamation had a profound impact on both the North and the South. In the North, it galvanized support for the war effort and provided a moral imperative to the Union cause. In the South, it was met with defiance and anger, further solidifying the Confederacy's resolve. After 4 long years of bloodshed, the tide of the war finally turned in favor of the Union. With key victories at Vicksburg and Gettysburg, the Confederacy found itself increasingly isolated and depleted. On April 9, 1865, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered his army to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia. The news of Lee's surrender sparked celebrations across the North. The Union was preserved, and slavery was abolished. However, the nation's joy was short-lived. On April 14, 1865, just 5 days after Lee's surrender, President Lincoln was assassinated by John Wilkes Booth, a Confederate sympathizer. Lincoln's assassination sent shockwaves through the nation. The man who had guided the country through its darkest hour, who had signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and who had spoken so eloquently of binding up the nation's wounds, was gone. The nation mourned the loss of its leader and grappled with the uncertain future that lay ahead. Section 5. Binding the Wounds. The Promise of Reconstruction. With the end of the Civil War, the nation faced the daunting task of rebuilding a shattered South and integrating formerly enslaved people into society. This period, known as Reconstruction, lasted from 1865 to 1877. It was a time of both great promise and bitter disappointment. Reconstruction aimed to reunite the nation, rebuild the South's economy, and ensure the rights of formerly enslaved people. The federal government established agencies like the Freedmen's Bureau to provide education, healthcare, and economic assistance to freedmen. However, Reconstruction faced immense challenges from the outset. The South was devastated, its economy in ruins, its social order upended. White Southerners, many of whom resented the North's victory and the end of slavery, resisted Reconstruction efforts. Section 6. The Long Road to Equality Reconstruction Amendments. To solidify the gains of the Civil War and guarantee equal rights for all Americans, Congress passed 3 landmark amendments to the Constitution during the Reconstruction era. These amendments, known as the Reconstruction Amendments, aim to reshape the nation's legal and social landscape. The 13th Amendment, ratified in 1865, abolished slavery in the United States, formally ending the institution that had divided the nation for so long. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, granted citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved people, and guaranteed them equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, prohibited the denial of the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. These amendments represented a significant step towards fulfilling the promise of equality for all Americans. Section 7. Black Reconstruction, a people's struggle for freedom. During Reconstruction, African Americans seized the opportunity to exercise their newfound freedom and shape their own destinies. They built schools, churches, and businesses. They participated in the political process, electing black representatives to state and federal government for the first time in American history. Black men, newly enfranchised by the 15th Amendment, flocked to the polls, eager to exercise their right to vote and have a say in the governance of their communities and the nation. They elected black representatives to state legislatures and to the United States Congress, bringing their voices and experiences to the halls of power. Black Reconstruction was not without its challenges. White Southerners, resentful of black political and economic empowerment, resorted to violence and intimidation to suppress black voting and undermine Reconstruction efforts. Section 8. The backlash, white resistance, and the undoing of Reconstruction. As Reconstruction progressed, white Southerners grew increasingly resistant to the changes sweeping through their region. They resented the federal government's presence, the rise of black political power, and the social and economic upheaval that accompanied Reconstruction. White Southerners formed paramilitary groups, such as the Ku Klux Klan, which terrorized black communities, intimidated voters, and sought to restore white supremacy. These groups operated with impunity in many parts of the South, targeting black leaders, educators, and anyone who dared to challenge the racial hierarchy. The federal government's commitment to Reconstruction waned in the face of mounting challenges and shifting political winds. As the North's resolve weakened, white Southerners gained control of state governments and began to dismantle Reconstruction policies. Section 9. The Compromise of 1877, the end of an era. By 1877, Reconstruction was on its last legs. The disputed presidential election of 1876 between Rutherford B. Hayes, a Republican, and Samuel Tilden, a Democrat, plunged the nation into a political crisis. The election results were contested in several southern states, and the outcome remained uncertain. To resolve the crisis, a backroom deal, known as the Compromise of 1877, was struck. In exchange for Southern Democrats supporting Hayes's claim to the presidency, federal troops were withdrawn from the South, effectively ending Reconstruction. The Compromise of 1877 marked a turning point in American history. It signaled the end of federal efforts to protect black rights in the South and ushered in an era of Jim Crow segregation and disenfranchisement that would last for nearly a century. Section 10. The Unfinished Revolution, Reconstruction's Legacy. Reconstruction, though ultimately unsuccessful in achieving its goals of racial equality and a just society in the South, left an indelible mark on American history. It represented a noble, if flawed, attempt to heal the wounds of war and create a more inclusive democracy. Reconstruction's legacy is complex and multifaceted. It laid the groundwork for the civil rights movement of the 20th century, inspiring generations of activists to continue the fight for equality. The Reconstruction Amendments, though initially undermined, provided the legal foundation for later civil rights victories. However, Reconstruction's failure to protect black rights in the South had long-lasting consequences. The Jim Crow era, with its system of segregation, disenfranchisement, and racial violence, cast a long shadow over American society. Section 11. Echoes of the Past. The Civil War and Reconstruction in Modern America. The Civil War and Reconstruction continue to resonate in American society today. The issues of race, equality, and the legacy of slavery remain deeply ingrained in the nation's social and political fabric. Debates over Confederate monuments, the meaning of the Confederate flag, and the teaching of history in schools reflect the ongoing struggle to come to terms with the nation's past. The Black Lives Matter movement, with its focus on racial justice and police brutality, draws direct connections to the unfinished work of Reconstruction. The Civil War and Reconstruction serve as a reminder that the struggle for a more perfect union is an ongoing process, requiring constant vigilance, dialogue, and a commitment to justice and equality for all.